If you're anything like me, then you really enjoy retro gaming. For some, this means reaching for a computer or phone and firing up an emulator, while for others, it means gaming on official hardware. It's only recently been possible that you could do something like this on a device that's affordable, has amazing performance and build quality, and is open sourced from day one. How's it going, everyone? My name is Taki, and today I'm going to tell you why the Retro Game 350 is the king when it comes to purpose-built open source retro gaming. Before we get started, I have a quick request. I'm a very small channel right now, and I plan on doing a lot more of these product features in the future. Having a following is an important factor in getting early access to these devices so you can know if they're worth your time and money. So if you could please subscribe to the channel, it would honestly mean the world to me. The work that you are about to watch is a culmination of 40 hours worth of testing, editing, and filming. I make no money off of this, and I would love to know that there are like-minded people out there that support my work. Shameless plug is over. Let's get into the review. The Retro Game 350 is the newest device in a wave of open source handheld consoles coming out of China this year. Built by Anbernic in Shenzhen, China, the RG350 is a dual joystick system that supports an open source Linux distro out of the box. It also marks the first real upgrade for retro consoles in a long time. The system includes a 1 GHz processor with 512 MB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage, a 2500 mAh battery with over 5 hours of battery life, a beautiful 3.5-inch 320 by 240 IPS display protected by glass, dual joysticks with R3 and L3 support, dual L and R shoulder buttons, HDMI out, dual USB-C ports, and support for an additional 128 GB of storage through a second SD card slot. Did I mention it also includes a headphone jack with stereo speakers? When you boot up the system, you'll be greeted with a fairly plain UI that lists the included emulators, applications, freeware games, and system settings. You navigate through this UI by using the D-pad or left joystick as well as the L and R shoulder buttons. Anyone that's familiar with these open source retro systems will feel right at home, but I wanted to include some basic information for people that are completely new to these systems. Comfort is something that's very important when you're looking into buying a device like this. The left D-pad is sturdy with a small to medium amount of pressure required to make contact. If I had to compare it to anything, I would say that it resembles the feeling of pressing an SNES D-pad. It's also worth noting that the D-pad doesn't feel cheap or mushy. It actually feels much better than other systems that I've modded for retro gaming like the PSP 2000 and the DS. The A, B, X, Y buttons also have a very satisfying tactile response when you press them that feels good in the hand. The shoulders are your standard switches found in many gadgets that are reminiscent of miniature mechanical keyboard keys. Using the included hardware testing applications, we are able to test the joysticks for dead spots. My right stick has a small amount of dead space when pointed directly down. The hardware tests also allow us to test the rumble feature for this device. This feature is not currently supported in any emulator at this point, but it's worth mentioning that the rumble feature does in fact exist, and it does work well. This is a mic'd up recording of the device at full power. The bottom of the device houses our power and reset buttons along with a volume rocker. Brightness on this device is controlled through a combination of holding the power button down and pressing the volume rocker up or down, with the screen being able to completely shut off at the lowest level of brightness. This is also where we find our stereo speakers that pump out some good quality sound. This is a mic'd up recording of the device playing in emulation. The top of the unit houses our two USB-C ports, an HDMI port, a headphone jack, and dual shoulder buttons. You can access the internals of this device by removing the 4 screws on the back. This will give you physical access to the internal SD card storage along with the battery that I hope will be replaceable in the future. I've had a few questions asking specifically about the caps on the joysticks and what the device looks like without them. Removing the caps is fairly straightforward, but it doesn't do much to lower the profile of the device, which stands at exactly 2 cm thick with the sticks included. The joystick placement is already something that's causing a lot of division in the community, but I will say that it does grow on you, and for the instances where both sticks are supported, it does work well. One of these cases being the included copy of Doom on the system that you can see running in the background now. The stick placement can really be forgiven if you take into consideration that you now will be able to play top-down arcade games in their full glory. You'll have to bear with this emulation as it's flipped the wrong way, but the game is still playable, and as someone that's never played these types of arcade games before, I find it to be a new and refreshing experience that I'm sure many others will enjoy. Even coming from someone like me who likes this system, the joysticks aren't without fault, and you can notice this the most when you're playing games that rely on frequent presses of the B button. You will find that your thumb will press against the right joystick often, which is a minor annoyance. That being said, I really wish this right stick was smaller than it is right now, and I will most likely look into modding this to be smaller if possible. Again, it's a minor annoyance, but I have to state it because it is worth mentioning. The IPS display is definitely a big selling point for this device, both for its clarity and sharpness. The viewing angles of this thing are essentially 90 in all directions, and the screen is bright and vivid. It's difficult to capture image quality of a screen while recording, but I've tried to do this screen justice. I would say for the most part that the image quality that you will notice in real life is definitely going to be higher than what you can see on YouTube. This leads us to the biggest selling point for this device in my opinion, which is the emulation performance. Now, I've already covered emulation of 5 systems so far, so you can feel free to reference those if you're on the fence about buying this device. But the most important thing that needs to be mentioned here is the fact that this is an open source system made better by the countless hours of work put into it by volunteer developers. Those developers can work on whatever projects they want, but they are most likely going to invest their time in projects and hardware that show the most promise. And for the most part, that's going to be processors that are better or like the one in the RG350. I would personally consider time spent on the sub 700 MHz processors to be largely a waste of time now, given how old they are at this point. So buying into an RG350 means buying into the growing community of development that will form around it to further the already good performance that we have out of the stock device. If you haven't yet seen my emulation tests, they essentially boil down to the fact that you will get great emulation performance from anything Gen 4 and below, with great performance in GBA across the board, a great selection of PS1 games that run flawlessly, and some promising initial results from an alpha build of N64. Again, the future of this device is largely in the hands of talented programmers around the world that work on porting emulators to these systems. When I got this device, I really only wanted to be able to play SNES and some Game Boy games, but the added processor power means that I now have access to my favorite RPGs wherever I go without having to put up with less than perfect FPS. Anything that we get in the future is just icing on the cake. I couldn't do a review of the RG350 without directly comparing it to something that's popular from the previous generation, so I'm going to do a little side-by-side comparison between the LDK and the 350 to help illustrate some further points that I would want to know if I couldn't decide how to pick a retro console. The LDK is popular for its size and cost, but it makes sacrifices to get a low price point. The screen is plastic and scratches very easily, and the body itself feels like a cheap McDonald's toy from the 90s. But the moment you pick up the 350, you instantly realize that you're holding a premium device. Even though it's still made out of plastic, the plastic that's used for its mold feels much better and more robust than its yellow friend. It has a nice weight in the hand, the buttons don't sound like cheap little chiclets when you press on them like they do on the LDK, and it also doesn't scream cheap plastic toy as much as both versions of the LDK. For those that will compare the price of this unit to the previous generation and not understand why the RG is the obvious choice, it comes down to the fact that with the LDK or similar devices, you will be making compromises in FPS in systems like PlayStation, SNES, and Game Boy. If you spend $40 on a device to get 40 FPS, you're going to hate that you didn't spend more to get 60. All that being said, there are other aspects of this device that should be improved upon in the future, one of which is the material of the back cover. The back cover is a smooth plastic panel that's screaming to be made out of a matte material. This is something that I noticed when I was doing all of these recordings, as it's very easy to nudge the device with nothing to act as feet on the underside. A matte back would add some more comfort to your fingers, which will easily be sliding around on the underside of the device while you play. Additionally, at the price point this unit is going for, more of the components that go into the device should be constructed from other materials besides plastic. the perimeter casing could easily be changed to a sturdier material than is currently being used to further help with the image of this device. So that leaves us with our closing remarks. The RG350 is the first in hopefully a long line of powerful open source handheld systems that the community has been asking for a long time. It's got an amazing build quality with a really good display, and as long as it stays competitively priced within the $60 to $90 bracket, it will remain to be the best currently available option if you want to own a device like this. Any more money than this, and it's competing against more premium devices that can easily put it to shame in the same way that this device puts the LDK to shame. Anyway, I've been your host on this review. If you end up getting the device in the future, feel free to let me know what you think about in the comments section below. If there's something that I've left out that you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll make sure to address it. Now go enjoy the rest of your day. Taki out.